Imagine being sentenced to life in prison for marijuana. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. There's a story coming out of Mississippi that I think a lot of people don't know about. It involves a guy being sentenced to life in prison for marijuana. Yes, you heard that right. Let me pull up the article because this is rather interesting. All right, so here we go. Mississippi court upholds life sentence for pot possession. Let's scroll down. The Mississippi Court of Appeals on Tuesday upheld a life sentence for a man convicted of a marijuana possession charge because he had previous convictions and those made him a habitual offender. Interesting. Alan Russell, 38, was sentenced to life in Forest County in 2019 after a jury found him guilty of possession of more than 30 grams of marijuana. I'm going to pause right there for just a second. Number one, this is why we need to legalize marijuana federally, not by state, federally. Number two, this story is already ridiculous. Like, I know that there is, some weird law like in Mississippi, and I'll get into that point later on in the article, but this is absolutely ridiculous that someone can go to prison for life because of marijuana. Now let's get back to the article. In Mississippi, a person can be sentenced to life without parole after serving at least 1 year in prison on 2 separate felonies, one of which must be a violent offense. Russell was convicted on 2 home burglaries in 2004 and for unlawful possession of a firearm in 2015. By law, burglary is a violent offense in Mississippi, whether or not there is proof that violence occurred. Of course, why does that not surprise me? Here's the important part. That was not the case when Russell was sentenced for home burglary in 2004. Then, burglary was only considered a violent crime if there was proof of violence. The law changed in 2014. I'm gonna pause right there and come right back at you. So the way I see it, if that wasn't the law when he was convicted, when he had that crime, why wasn't he grandfathered in under the old law? Why were they able to take the new law and apply it to previous convictions? Let's get back to the article. In his appeal, Russell argued that a life sentence constitutes cruel and unusual punishment and is grossly disproportionate to his crime of marijuana possession. The Court of Appeals disagreed in its majority opinion, stating that Russell's life sentence is in accordance with Mississippi law. Russell is not being sentenced solely for having marijuana, but for being a habitual offender. But several dissenting judges argued that the court can and should make exceptions. The purpose of the criminal justice system is to punish those who break the law, deter them from making similar mistakes, and give them the opportunity to become productive members of society. The fact that judges are not routinely given the ability to exercise discretion in sentencing all habitual offenders is completely at odds with this goal. Let me pop back out. So here we go. So the problem with this is they're basically saying it's because he was a habitual offender. Now, this goes back to the criminal justice system because the purpose of the criminal justice system is to rehabilitate. But we know that it doesn't. That is probably why he was a habitual offender. Regardless of that, why are you still giving him a life sentence when the crime that he has this time is for possessing marijuana? This is why I tell people, once you are in the criminal justice system, it is very difficult to get out of it. Once you have something on your record, it's like you're a target. It's very hard. It's a cycle, it just repeats because, again, prisons don't actually rehabilitate people. This is why a lot of people that get out of prison end up committing crimes again. It's also really hard to get a job if you have a criminal record. So if you don't have a job, you don't have income, what are you going to do so that you can eat? You're going to do something criminal so that you can get money so that you can eat. Let's get back to the article. Russell was given 2 concurrent 15-year sentences after pleading guilty to burglary in April 2004. The charging documents in those cases indicate the 2 burglaries involved the same house and occurred 2 days apart. He served a little more than 8.5 years and was released from prison February 2014. So FYI, he had already served time. Russell pleaded guilty to possession of a weapon as a convicted felon in October 2015. He was sentenced to 10 years, but was only required to serve 2. Boom. He was only required to serve 2 when he was sentenced to 10 years. But now they're trying to make him serve life. Does that make any sense to anyone? Going further down, he was then arrested November 29, 2017 for possessing marijuana. Again, we need to legalize marijuana. It needs to be decriminalized all across the board. This is just freaking ridiculous. Under Mississippi law, possession of between 30 and 250 grams of marijuana can carry a punishment of up to 3 years in prison and a $3,000 fine or both. Russell was found with 5 bags of a green leafy substance. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. This is how I see this. First of all, I don't think people should be going to prison for marijuana. That's just me. But second of all, under Mississippi law, if the maximum time they can serve for marijuana is 3 years, why are they giving him a life sentence? Because also under Mississippi law, he's a habitual offender. You guys you see where I'm going with this? Like, again, this is how people get stuck in the criminal justice system. It is very difficult to get out. This guy committed burglary. You caught him with a firearm. Okay. But now, because he has weed, you're going to be like, you're habitual offender. You're going to get a life sentence because of this marijuana that you get. Now, you're probably wondering, what does Russell look like? Let me share my screen. Boom. I probably didn't even have to show you. You probably already knew that he was Black. Now, I'm not here to debate whether or not he did the crime. But you got to ask yourself, even though Mississippi has that law, would Alan Russell have served or been sentenced a life sentence if Alan Russell was white? Over time, we see it in the criminal justice system but it starts in the school system. And as someone who works in education, I have seen it and I've experienced it. And I can tell you that Black students are usually punished more harsher than white students for the same thing, the same offense. This is what people mean when they talk about the school to prison pipeline. It starts in the school system. I'm willing to bet Alan Russell probably had some incidents when he was in school. He was probably punished more harsher. Teachers probably gave up on him, ended up in the criminal justice system. It happens. I think Mississippi needs to change that law, habitual offender. I think marijuana needs to be legalized all across the country, not state by state. But I also think that if Alan Russell was white, he wouldn't be serving a life sentence. If Alan Russell was a white man, I bet you the judges would have been willing to make an exception for him. That's one of the problems with the criminal justice system. Sentencing this guy to life in prison because he's an habitual offender for a marijuana offense, when the prison system that he was serving time in is supposed to rehabilitate you so that you don't become a habitual offender, but it doesn't. So maybe instead of punishing the people, maybe you need to fix the prison system. And this is why I am for defunding the police, abolishing prisons. Get rid of it. It doesn't work.